defined by the Britannica Encyclopedia as the process of generating an identical copy of a cell or an organism. In the midst of overpopulation and global warming, which affects our agricultural industry, today Ekram, Aleena, and I are looking at food cloning in relation to our food source. We are taking a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of food cloning. But first, how exactly can you clone food? The concept sounds so foreign. Well, there are two main ways you can clone food that we will be looking into in this documentary. The first is cloning plants via artificial propagation, and the second is cloning meat via cell cultures in a lab. Artificial propagation is the process of producing new plants from a single parent plant under human influence. It has been done for thousands of years. The cool thing about artificial propagation is that you are using semi-mature plants to create or produce fully mature plants, which means when you're producing plants, that requires less time as opposed to planting the seeds to create or produce a completely new plant. Now let's take a look at some of the artificial propagation strategies that can be used to clone the produce we eat. Division, also known as splitting. Plants with more than one rooted crown may be divided into individual crowns, which are then planted separately. Division is usable on plants with more than one stem. Divide the roots with your hands or with a sharp knife. Division can also be used for bulb plants such as garlic, onion, and shallot. With garlic, for example, you can plant individual cloves to grow a garlic bulb. How exciting! Another artificial propagation method is grafting, where you join different plant parts together so they grow as one plant. Grafting is used to propagate fruit trees such as apple and pear trees, and nut trees such as almond trees. For fruit trees, the preferred method of propagation is cleft grafting, where the root of one plant, called the rootstock, is split and the stem section of another plant, called the scion, is placed into it. There's also stem cutting, where you take the shoot tip or part of a stem from the parent plant and put it into a growth medium so that it develops roots. Stem cutting is a popular propagation technique for herbs such as basil and oregano. In 2013, Mark Post of Maastricht University developed the world's first cultured meat burger assembled from tiny bits of beef muscle tissue. Cloning meat uses the practices of regenerative science. Stem cells are harvested by taking a tissue sample from the desired animal without harming it. From this tissue sample, stem cells are isolated. For example, cells are isolated to grow as muscle cells. Stem cells are put into a bioreactor filled with nutrients, amino acids, growth hormones, and a serum called FBS, fetal bovine serum. These ingredients help support cell replication. FBS is a protein-based feed that is needed because it contains growth factors for the cell while also containing a low amount of antibodies. Cells continue to grow in the bioreactor until later on, where they can be squished together to create meat samples.
Hello! After everything you learned about the logistics of cloning food, you may be wondering, how can we use this to benefit the human race? Well, I'm glad you asked, scholars of biology. There are two main benefits of cloning food. Not only can it reduce the chances of food going extinct, but also lower the prices of food in our current world of inflation. When we tend to think of extinction, we think of animals like rhinos, tigers, and polar bears. But did you know that some of the world's most favorite foods and beverages are also starting to go extinct? A popular example of this is coffee. Coffee is one of the most consumed liquids in the world, with over 500 billion cups of coffee consumed every year. And coffee culture itself has taken over by storm. Okay guys, do you like coffee?
Yeah. I like it very much. I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
So in a general week, I will drink anywhere from 14 to 16 cups of coffee.
Growing coffee is no easy task, since they're very picky about the environment where they live in. Too hot and the beans won't grow correctly. Too cold and the beans will freeze. It also needs a specific amount of rain, 1,000 to 1,200 meters of elevation above the ground, and also they prefer warm days and cool nights. The effects of climate change, however, are greatly affecting the farming process by pushing the optimal level for coffee beans higher up these mountains while the ones below die out. The rise of temperatures also increase the insect population in these regions, destroying the coffee beans and the soil where the trees grow. And it's not just coffee. Chocolate, honey, avocados, strawberries, and bananas are just some of the foods that will go extinct due to climate change. However, it is not as easy as just fixing climate change. The process will take decades to achieve, and it may not be enough to preserve the foods that we keep dear to our hearts. With the advanced technology we possess, we can clone food and ensure that the livelihood of these foods is maintained and survive as we try to combat the effects of climate change. By artificially propagating coffee using grafting or stem cutting, these techniques can reduce the extinction of coffee beans. Have you ever been to the grocery store and realized that the once $1 chocolate bar you loved is now $1.20? It has become extremely obvious that the prices of food is becoming unbelievably expensive. But cloning food could change all of that. According to the Consumer Price Index from April 2022, the cost of food has gone up by 9.7% since last year. This has been the biggest jump since September 1981. Fresh fruit and vegetables have increased by 10% and 8.2%. Meat prices have gone up by 10.1%. But the foods that have seen the most significant price increase contain wheat and grains, with pasta prices jumping by almost 19.6% more than last year. Bread and rice have also increased by 12.2% and 7.4%. These are a lot of numbers. So to simplify it, we decided to take a trip to our local No Frills.
Okay guys, we're at No Frills now, and we're going to be here to compare prices from 2021. I have a flyer from there. So we'll just be walking around comparing prices. Raspberries used to be, there's only one raspberry box here. Raspberries used to be $2.97, and now they've basically doubled to $6.
Oh my gosh.
There's only one now, so we'll leave that there.
The beefsteak tomatoes were $1.97, and currently they are a whopping $3 per pound.
No Frills said that pink salmon would always be $8, but clearly that's a lie because now salmon's $10.
And we know why, because of
Inflation! Pound of flour, 10 kilograms, used to cost $8.77, and now it is almost $20. There's none left, but that is still really expensive.
Even though it was fun seeing how the numbers in our research were reflected in real life, there was also something worth mentioning.
There's no food anymore. There's no food. We went across this entire No Frills, and we found nothing.
we love No Frills though.
We love No Frills. We're No Frills homies.
Stop advertising for No Frills.
Now, the reasons why there was no food in that No Frills could have varied from a supply chain issue to an inventory shortage, or we could have just walked into the worst No Frills in Canada. Nonetheless, these issues could have been avoided if we used human technology to clone food efficiently. According to the laws of supply and demand, cloning food would increase these supplies, which would help meet the current demand with food, which would inherently lower the food prices. Cloning food would be more convenient for both businesses and consumers, who are worried more than ever about if their paychecks will be enough to put food on the table. But what about the scientific aspects that could benefit us? With meat cloning, the meat is growing in a controlled environment. That means the food labs can choose what they can put inside the meat. This is a double-edged sword since labs can put unhealthy ingredients, but labs could also control the fat content in meat. Instead of consumers eating high saturated fats, they could eat meat high in omega-3s. This could contribute to a healthier consumption of meat. The possibilities seem endless with cloning food, but with anything, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Right, Aleena?
That's right, Akram. When it comes to cloning food, one might suggest that it ensures that there is enough food for the upcoming generations. However, why clone more food if there's already enough food for the current population? Conducted by the UN, there is still a staggering 820 million people that still go starving around the world. And after going through No Frills and seeing absolutely nothing there, one might suggest that by increasing food production, it will be the answer to all these problems, and that by cloning food can help us achieve this goal. But we already increased the agricultural practices in the past. In the 1960s, humans tripled agricultural production. However, still, 820 million people still go starving today.
So there is no guarantee that by increasing food productions through cloning is going to solve the world hunger issues or help restock shelves in supermarkets. In fact, world hunger is mostly caused by food generated by developed countries or the improper distribution of food throughout the world. Cloning food may not be the solution to solving world hunger or to restocking supermarket shelves. And even if we do start cloning foods, there's no guarantee that these food sources are going to be consumed, and they may end up as food waste instead. We may end up wasting a lot of resources into cloning these foods that we don't even need. Cloning, in a sense, is where the DNA of the offspring is identical to the DNA of the parent. Cloning in the 21st century hasn't got to the massive scale production yet, so in order to look at the potential consequences it has on the population of the species and each individual, we should look at artificial breeding. As an example of artificial breeding that is already taking place is on chicken farms, where humans are breeding chickens to have bigger thighs and bigger breasts in a shorter amount of time. This leads to chickens having musculoskeletal abnormalities, and this causes a decline in their locomotor skills. And although this is selective breeding, cloning will have the same effects if continued in a similar manner. Also keep in mind that if humans were to control what specific traits get passed down to the next generation, then undesirable traits present in other individuals will start to disappear, causing the lack of genetic diversity amongst the population over time. Not only that, but over the course of several generations, members of the population will start to have more similar DNA and can cause more dangerous recessive alleles to be expressed in their offspring, which may lead to death of the offspring or many individuals within the entire population. Recessive alleles aren't the only thing that could potentially kill the species that we're trying to consume. If the DNA of each of the individuals of the species are similar or exactly the same as one another, it will only take a single virus or disease to kill off the rest of the species. FBS, also known as fetal bovine serum, comes from the blood of a cow fetus, which is removed from a pregnant mother right before she is slaughtered. Then, the dying fetus is kept alive for as long as possible to ensure enough good blood is obtained from the fetus. The process of extracting FBS is inhuman and goes against many people's morals, which can cause an uprising against cloning meat in the future. Even today, there are many debates all around the world on whether or not FBS is permissible in many religions, such as Islam and Judaism. So that's all from us, folks. From what you take from this documentary really depends on your morals.
Cloning food clearly has its risks and benefits, but you know the common saying, you never know unless you try.
Bye, everyone.
Bye!
Let me choose. Can you restart that?
Hi, Aleena. I mean, not Aleena. Aleena.
Oh, wow.
What? Go.